Let me start out by welcoming you to the VTSS team and by introducing ourselves. My name is Maribel Simra. I am the Associate Director of the Office of Student Services at the Virginia Department of Education, and I oversee VTSS efforts with the State Department. With me today is Sophia Farmer. Sophia is the VTSS Implementation Specialist at the VTSS Research and Implementation Center, which we call the RIC, at Virginia Commonwealth University. What you see here on the screen is our team, our smiley team of VTSS systems coaches from the RIC, as well as our TTACs. We are all so glad that you have joined our team and want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us today. All right, so this is a map of who we are right now, or where we are right now, and as you can see, we are growing. VTSS is now working with 54 school divisions in Virginia, so we're getting close to that halfway line. In this new cohort, Cohort 5, we welcome Allegheny, Caroline, Chesterfield, Falls Church City, Gloucester, Grayson, Manassas, Mecklenburg, Loudoun, Lunenburg, Petersburg, Poquoson, Salem, and York County. We are so very excited to have you on board, and we look forward to working with you and your school teams. I am now going to turn it over to Sophia that is going to get us started, and then you will hear back from me in a little bit to talk about some funding information. Sophia?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm glad we all can hear. So what we're attempting to do in this webinar is to help you really navigate the first steps, or navigate those first steps on your path towards VTSS implementation. In our time together, we're hoping to outline the very first steps that you'll take. We hope to go over some of the initial professional learning that you'll have access to. We'll outline some of the coaching expectations both within the division and those coaching expectations we have for our external coaches. And we'll talk, as Maribel suggested, at the end about accessing some funding to help with startup costs for implementation. So let's get to those first steps. This hopefully looks familiar to you. This is the curriculum, if you will, the work of VTSS. You were exposed to this whether you were exploring in the webinar series or exploring in some of the on-site learning opportunities. But either way, you engaged in what we call the first step of implementation. Implementation is a science, and that first step was to explore whether or not VTSS was a need for you as identified in your data, whether VTSS was a good fit with current and ongoing division goals, initiatives, priorities, infrastructure, and values. You talked about and explored whether or not you had the resources to commit to implementation, including the staffing and the time for training and coaching, the evidence behind VTSS, and how ready your division is to implement VTSS, and if you have the capacity to implement. This matrix, introduced in exploration, outlines some, but not all, of the action items that you've completed as part of the application process. Now that you are a part of a VTSS cohort, you'll continue to move through the phases of implementation. And remember that this is a cyclical, not linear process. As you begin new aspects of implementation, for example, adding or aligning academics or restorative practices, you'll spiral back through the phases in order to ensure that you're well supported and ready to implement. So now you're ready to begin installing or work through the installation phase. We began some of these steps as pre-work in your exploration phase, but really what you'll be doing over the next couple of months is shoring up some of those early installation activities, particularly around the data and systems and some initial practices you'll need for implementation of VTSS. You will be assigned 2 coaches or guides to help you trek this path. One of your coaches will be from the VTSS Research and Implementation Center, and the other is from your regional TTAC or Training and Technical Assistance Center. These coaches will be your partners in this work. Their role is to support you in implementation. Their role is to help you guys build the capacity in your division and in your schools to sustain this systems change initiative. This is a partnership relationship. So in the next week or so, if they haven't already, you should be receiving a phone call or email from both of your coaches to schedule your first division level meeting. This should look a little bit familiar to you. This was in both the webinar series and in the exploration what we call face-to-face or on-site PD. This was the Commitment for Success Agreement. You signed this with your division team, and it outlined some of the basic commitments that you made in order to ensure that implementation would be successful. In other words, based on research and experience, these are the steps required to install any innovation, really, but in this case, VTSS. Remember, you're not in this alone. You have your coaches as partners. They will help you work through these first few steps. So let's start by reviewing a few of them. It's what's circled up here on your screen. The first thing you're going to want to make sure that you do is form that division leadership team that is representative of the division and the community. We talked a lot about this in your exploration phase. This should include your superintendent, executive staff, instruction, special education, student services, and family members. This team needs to be comprehensive and representative. One of the most common errors that our VTSS division level teams make is not including family and community-based partners. So your coach, when they come out to your division, will work with the team you currently have and analyze that membership to see if there are any voices missing from the table and how we could problem solve around getting them to implementation. This step of having the right team in place is critical. One of the biggest barriers we have to sustained implementation with fidelity is not having that team and not having that team well equipped to help implement and support schools with implementation fidelity. This is a very important message for you to take back to your full team and for coaches to help you emphasize with your team. Divisions are our unit of implementation. You guys are doing the work of implementing a whole systems change reform effort. You do this by supporting implementation of practices within the schools. And the schools are a unit of analysis, right? Is it working as a whole? Are kids overall getting better, right? Are they receiving more services or more interventions, or is core instruction improving? And of course, ultimately, our student is the unit of impact. That is the change we hope to see. The very next step you're going to do once you've ensured that your team is in the right place and you have the right folks is that you're going to establish together with your coaches a regularly set schedule for meeting each month. This ensures that your coaches will be able to be with you each month and help guide that implementation. Again, this is a partnership approach, so we want to make sure that this regular meeting time works well with both of your coaches, the pair, as well as all folks on your team. If it happens that your superintendent is unavailable, and hopefully that wouldn't be for every meeting, but if your superintendent is unavailable, what is your process, or what we would call a communication loop? And you'll hear more about that as you get into implementation. But put in writing, document this loop. Who is going to be in charge of keeping the superintendent apprised of your implementation efforts? How are they going to do that, and by when? You'll want to document that on team meeting agenda so that that doesn't get lost. Once you've assigned your team or know who your team is, that team will then take a moment to decide who are going to be your division coordinators. Your division coordinators are or can be part of what we call the on-site or in-division systems coaches. These are the folks that commit to attending the monthly school-based VTSS team meetings, facilitating action planning, and supporting implementation at all three tiers, excuse me. You'll also want to make sure that these systems coaches attend the System Coaching Institute that we offer yearly and other specific coaching trainings that we offer. The Systems Coaching Institute start in September of this year with a 101A if you've never participated in one before. If you've been part of a PBIS implementation or have started implementing VTSS and have had the opportunity to attend Systems Coaching 101 and have completed all 3 sessions, A, B, and C, you are eligible to participate in 102A. You'll want to discuss with your coaches which is the better match for you. Of those division systems coaches, you're going to assign 1 or 2 of them that will be our points of contact, if you will, our division coordinators. For most of you, that's the folks that you already assigned through the application process and that Maribel reached out to with information of this webinar. So while, in other words, you're going to have a full division team, a subset of that team might serve as division systems coaches, and a subset of that group would be 1 or 2 people that will serve as the points of contact or coordinators for this work moving forward. So now that you have your team and you have your time to meet, what are we doing? At your first DLT meeting or division level team meeting, your coaches are going to review with you the VTSS scope and sequence. This scope and sequence is your guide to all professional learning and subsequent coaching activities that take you through that VTSS curriculum. Remember, we said that VTSS curriculum was the matrix. That matrix that you've seen before has lots of pieces to it, right? It has exploration, installation, initial implementation, and full implementation of 6 basic components. So in order to help guide you through the learning in that curriculum, much like students have their scope and sequence, or our curriculum for the SOLs has a scope and sequence, we have a scope and sequence for guiding you through that learning. So they're going to take you through the scope and sequence and really help you assess what is the best starting point for us as a division based on our data. For most of you, if not all of you, this will be strand 1. We'll start with your division team learning about data-informed decision-making. As your coaches will review with you, there are a few exceptions to that general rule. In other words, our scope and sequence does have some flexibility in it so that we can make room for contextual fit and to be responsive to your needs as a division. So there are a few exceptions to starting with strand 1, and you'll go over that with your coaches. Regardless of whether you're in strand 1, data-informed decision-making, strand 2, integrating academic practices into a tiered system, strand 3, optimizing aligned and integrated systems across core and up to advanced tiers, or strand 4 that looks at critical implementation topics, the dates for your professional learning are all the same. Every year, we have 3 opportunities for division teams across the state to get together. We try to do that in areas that aren't too far from you. So you'll see on the screen that the dates that are selected for the 18-19 school year. So October 18th, you'll see we'll be in Harrisonburg, and the 25th in Hampton. You would not attend both of those. You would select the one that is either A, closest to you, or B, has a date that works for you a little better. You'll see that we meet in December and again in March. This is typically the pattern of division level team trainings, 3 times a year for 1 day in October, December, and March. That will allow you as a division team to access the professional learning around the matrix or around our curriculum as outlined in the scope and sequence. So when do you start implementing with schools? We really want to start making a difference very quickly with kiddos. So also at one of your first division level team meetings, you will work with your systems coaches to determine the selections for VTSS demonstration sites. When we get you the information or the recording and PowerPoint of this webinar, and we'll do that through email to your systems coaches so they'll have that information when they come out to see you. We'll also include a short voice thread on how to select pilot or demonstration sites. Sometimes you might hear us call them early adopters. You will also get the matrix and the scope and sequence and the division calendar, which mentions some of these dates. Your coaches will help you decide what would be the best fit for demonstration sites. Once you've decided as a division level team who will be your demonstration sites, your next question will be, who and how are we going to work with the administrative team of that school to determine who will be the best on-site or school-based coaches for each site? So just like we formed our division team and then picked coaches at the division level, we're going to form our school-based team and pick school-based coaches. And then we're going to continue to follow the same path of implementation. So deciding those school-based coaches and working with your external and division level coaches, so those people you've assigned as division coaches and your external VTSS state level coaches and the administrators and school-based team to decide the professional learning plan for the school. So much like we access division level training, there are multiple opportunities for your schools to access professional learning. Again, what they access will depend on their entry point. If you have implemented PBIS and you have a strong PBIS systems in place, and that is evidenced by your data, particularly TFI or BOQ scores, then one starting place might be an academic alignment, and there's a plan outlined for that and how your schools can access that training. Typically, however, schools start with building their PBIS systems within the VTSS framework. Just like we marked our calendars for our division level team trainings, you will get a calendar of both division and school-based trainings. This will let you know when your schools can have access for various professional learning opportunities. In addition, you're going to set up, just like we did with the division level teams, monthly team meetings so that your coaches know how they are supporting and have a regular schedule for supporting your school-based teams. So again, important message moving forward. Whether it's a division level team or whether it's a school-based team, it is critical that full teams as much as possible attend the professional learning opportunities. Also moving forward, each DLT team or division level team meeting and then subsequently school level team meetings will have suggested action items to guide you through implementation. Those action items are determined by the team in collaboration with the VTSS systems coaches. They're usually as a result of or follow-up from professional learning days and or unfinished action items from the matrix. So for example, one of the activities in exploration was to look at your data systems and do a quick audit of your data systems. That is an activity we will spiral back around to make sure that regardless of your starting point in VTSS, that we have a data system that you are able to use to make sound data-informed decisions at both the division and the school level. So that's a follow-up activity from exploration, from the professional learning that you got in exploration, that will continue to show itself in your division level team meetings until that item is up and flowing or up and being used well. At this point, are there any questions around the very first steps that you will do with your division and your coaches? Okay, then Maribel, I'm going to turn it over to you for a discussion of what funding is available to them.
Great, thanks, Sophia. I am going to let you keep control of the slides, so if you will just flip through for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Hello again, everybody, and thanks, Sophia, for those first initial steps and great description of our what are our next steps that our division leadership teams will be taking. Okay, so funding. I know that one of the major questions that you may have at this point is around funding and what type of opportunities might be available to help support this important work. As a reminder, and again, you may be familiar with this, this is our VTSS Commitment for Success Agreement, which you all completed as part of your application. And one of those items is related to funding, and that is that part of your commitment to engaging in this partner work with us is that you would allocate funding and resources to support implementation of VTSS. Having said that, we also are very glad to have an opportunity to provide participants in VTSS Cohort 5, so that would be you all. Everybody's eligible for an implementation grant or implementation startup support through our state grants. Each one of our school divisions will receive a $20,000 state grant. Now, our state grants, this is a program that is done through our Virginia General Assembly. So the point of this program is to expand the number of schools implementing a system of positive behavioral interventions and support within VTSS. So these funds that are provided to you are supposed to help you offset some of those initial implementation costs. This is, as any state budget item goes, it is subject to available funding in future years. Right now, it is on the state budget for the current fiscal year as well as next fiscal year. So it is, we do hope that it continues to be a 2-year grant commitment in the very least, and of course that is subject to any changes in the state budget. So here are some of the steps that you could expect related to our state grants. We are already in process of these. So once these get signed, you are going to receive a grant award notification. And I put a little picture of that so you know what it looks like. These are not signed quite yet, but they're in process. And if you received one of these before through us, as I'm sure most of you have, you know that it can take a little bit of time for them to make it all the way through the state process. Once we receive the signed copies, we will mail the originals to your superintendent, and usually in our experience is they get routed to your finance office. Because we know how important it is for the program office to get this information as well, what I will do is once we get these signed copies, before mailing the originals to your division, I will go ahead and make electronic copies and email those electronic copies to each division coordinator. So you should be receiving, or your division coordinator should be receiving, an electronic copy of the GAN once it is signed. The GAN will tell you I believe it's box 9 under period of grant award. It will tell you that funds are for July 1st, 2018. So there will be, there's a little bit of backtracking there because it's already August, but the grant period is allowable from July 1st of 2018, and it goes through June 30th of 2019. That is the state fiscal year. We do know, and as Sophia shared, a lot of our professional learning opportunities, particularly for our schools, happen during the summer, and you will see that in our professional development calendar. And this is one of the reasons why we have fought hard to get these grants have an allowable extension through September 30th, 2018. So you will see again that the grant award period is going to be July 1st through June 30th, but you will be able to request and receive an extension to allow for funds being expended through September 30th of 2018. It is important that you pay close attention to box 22, which is the program-specific instructions. That is the portion at the bottom of the grant award notification, and this is the part that explains how to request those extensions and by when you need to request those extensions. Another important note about these state funds is to know that they are dispersed as a lump sum. And what that means is that the money arrives at your division. You do not have to submit reimbursement requests. So it is dispersed as a lump sum. Once you get your GAN, or once you receive via email your GAN, your coordinator will also receive at the same time a budget template and a list of allowable use of funds. You will then have 30 days, or your division leadership team will have 30 days from the time that you get this email with the official notification that you have the grant, which is all in process, so you all have them. It's just a matter of getting them signed. But once you receive that electronic copy, you will have 30 days from that time to return to us your budget proposal. So this is what is going to tell us, how is it that you are planning on spending these funds? Again, to guide you, you will have a budget template, which is what you will return back to us, and you will also have a form that gives you a list of what is allowable under these particular grants. Once you submit it, you will get an email back that says this is approved or request for any kind of changes. And once you get that approval email, that means that you can start spending your funds. Very important to note related to these proposed budgets is that you want to make sure that your proposed activities or your proposed way of spending these funds are directly related to VTSS implementation activities. This is why it is very important that you use your first division leadership team meeting to really think about how is it that you can help support your implementation. So as you are looking at the scope and sequence and deciding on which trainings, or which are going to be your demonstration schools, which trainings your schools are going to access for the year, you know already what your division leadership team is going to access for the year. That can help you start planning around, okay, how can we use these funds to help support, for example, travel to these events? So what does this mean in terms of implementation? Based on what your decisions are in that first DLT meeting or subsequent DLT meetings. So I really encourage you to work closely with your coaches as you are trying to sort out through some of this to create your budget. I am going to pause for a second because I did see flash on the screen that we have a number of questions. Sophia, is there anything that I need to address before I move on? Ooh, 9/30/2019. Yes, Erin, that is, thank you for that catch. Absolutely, that would be through 9/30/2019. Yes. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so let's move on to some of the grant reporting responsibilities. Now, again, these will be spelled out to you in that box 22, those program-specific instructions. We are also in the process of developing a web page on our BTSS site that can help provide you with some templates and some reminders related to these responsibilities. Again, related to your grant, you will have a mid-year report that is due around January or early February 2019. The specific date will be on that program-specific instructions box of your GAN. You will also be provided with a template on what the mid-year report looks like. Basically, that is just an accounting of grants that you would have spent by that time. So it looks very similar to what the proposed budget looks like. It is just telling us this is how much of the funding you have spent up to that point. The end of year report will be due 30 days after grant closeout. So that would be either at the end of July 2019, if you did not request an extension, or at the end of October, if that extension was requested, and that is October 2019. The end of year report, again, documents how you spent your funds, your grant funds, as well as a brief explanation of your implementation activities. Another important reminder is that budget revisions are possible and they may be requested at any time. So please do not feel when you first meet with your division leadership team to identify how you're proposing to use your budget, you are not locked into that particular proposed budget through the end of the year. That budget would be approved, but you are able to make changes if your implementation plan changes during the year. Now, to make a budget or to request a budget revision, you would complete a budget template. You would email that revised budget with a justification, and this is not very formal. It can just be in the email. And you have to wait till you receive a note from us indicating that that change has been approved, and you can start using your funds according to the new revised budget once those funds are approved, or once that revision is approved. We are very fortunate to have Susan Trulub, who's a specialist in my office, the Office of Student Services, that assists us as managing all of our BTSS grants. I have included her email and her phone number, and she is able to answer any specific questions about grants. And of course, Sophia and I are also available to answer your questions. Susie is the person that is in charge of managing them. So most of the time we will be directing you to her, but you can access her directly as well. At this time, I'm going to pause again to see if there's any questions related to funding or specifically regarding the state grants, or if you have any additional questions regarding the next steps for initial BTSS implementation that we may not have covered during this time. And here's where you may want to, if you do want to ask a question, you have the option of typing it in the chat box, or this is also a good time, since this is the end of the webinar, to, you can unmute yourself by clicking the little microphone button at the bottom left and asking the question. Okay, so we have the third, so we get a question regarding what was the third item regarding budget revisions. And that is, okay, so once you request a revision to your grant, you cannot use your funds in the revised way until we approve that revision. Usually it's not a very long process. When you submit a revision, a proposed budget revision, it takes us, I would say, approximately from a few days to a week to get back to you and either approve it or request a change, or we would explain to you why we would request a change. But what that means basically is that you want to wait until you are approved to make a change in the use of your budget before you actually do it. It gets a little dicey sometimes, or a little bit more difficult when we get the request after something has been implemented, and we don't want to get into any difficulty with non-allowable activities. So we ask you to wait until your budget revision is approved before moving forward with spending the money according to that. Okay, could you please show the travel dates for training again? Sure, so there will be, as Sophia's scrolling to that, I will tell you that along with a recording of this webinar, you will also receive a professional development calendar that will have all these dates on there again, but we are happy to scroll to the dates here. All right, so we have.
So the first set of dates, and it left my annotation on there, sorry about that. The first set of dates is the Systems Coaching 101. We really encourage you to attend that as the systems, oh goodness. Sorry about that. We really encourage you to attend that. Hopefully you can see now. Okay, we really encourage you to attend that because that's a deeper dive into some of the work that you'll be asked to support your team with. The second set of dates, so that's the 12th and 13th coming up for most of you for 101A. There's very few of you that have already gone through that 101 series. The next set of dates is for your whole division level team. And you can see there that that's October 18th is the first, followed by the 25th, depending on what's closest to you. You will also be getting this calendar. So we talked about working with your coaches. There you go. That will have all of those dates. It will also have the locations as they've been confirmed by our event planners. And that will have for both school and division level teams. So you'll have that, and that calendar will go all the way through next summer until, next fall. So you'll have that as well. And Maribel, it looked like there was one private question. Are the grant funds dispersed through Omega?
They are not. So they are dispersed through a lump sum. So there's nothing in Omega to request reimbursements for. So they will arrive at your school division. Normally, it typically takes 2-3 weeks after a GAN is signed for that to happen. So once we have the GAN signed, that does get to our finance office. So I would say 3 to 4 weeks might be a better estimate for those funds to arrive to your division. So no, there's once you receive them, your only responsibilities are really around submitting your budget and getting that approved, and you can start spending. The whole amount will be there, and it's dispersed at a single time, meaning that the whole $20,000 will arrive within a few weeks of the GAN being signed.
And is that a follow-up question? Is that a check or is that a transfer of funds?
Yeah, it's an automatic transfer of funds.
Okay.
And again, I don't see any more questions, but to just reiterate what Sophia brought up a little earlier, a recording of this webinar will be made available to all of our coaches that can then share it with you. We will also include all the supportive handouts and things we talked about. So this professional learning calendar, we talked about a voice thread that is going along with that as well, the scope and sequence. Am I missing anything, Sophia?
The VTSS matrix.
And
so they'll know exactly what they're working on.
Yes, so all those items will be provided all together to our VTSS coaches that will have them available to you. We do expect to also have them available on our website at some point soon, but that does take a little bit of longer time just to make sure we have everything accessible and ready to put up. So we wanted to make sure this was available to you as soon as possible, and emailing to coaches we thought was the quickest way to make that available. So that will be happening over the next day or so. And with that, I do not see any further questions. Please know that at any time you can reach out to me or Sophia for any implementation questions that you have. We are so very excited to have you join us, and I really look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. See you soon.